What do you make of I don't know which one of you wants to pick up here. What do you make of this rally, quote unquote?
It's not much of a rally. Like, you look at the S&P 500, I feel like as many names are up as are down. But if you're a member of the semiconductor world, you're doing pretty well. The SOX is up about 2%. And I think just nearly all of the names that are in that index, guys, are higher today. 29 of 30 names are actually showing some gains here.
I'm squarely focused on what's going on between the U.S. and China in London. We are reporting that trade talks are going to continue on Tuesday. The president just moments ago said we're doing well with China. China's not easy, but I'm only getting good reports.
Yeah, the fact that discussions are continuing into tomorrow is a good sign, and there haven't been any real negative headlines. The other story, of course, we're keeping an eye on is what's going on with Apple and the Worldwide Developers Conference. Not too far from where you and Carol are, Tim, but no real surprises out of that event today.
Yeah. A lot more style than substance, right?
There you go.
All right. As we get the closing bells here in New York, we'll get to some of the individual movers in a second. Apple closing out the day lower. The Dow Jones Industrial Average relatively unchanged on the day. It takes a while for these numbers to settle, but it looks like it's going to move lower by less than 10 points on the day. The S&P 500 higher by less than 10 points on the day, about 5 points higher than where it started, and that is a gain of about 0.1%. The Nasdaq up about 0.3% on the day. And let's take a look at the Russell 2000. A gain for the Russell 2000 of about 12 points, or about 0.6%.
All right, looking at the S&P 500, guys, as I mentioned earlier, kind of an even split. A few more names to the upside, Scarlett. 261 names in the S&P 500 actually gaining ground today, 239 to the downside.
All right, let's take a look at the IMAP, which looks at the 11 sectors in the S&P 500. Pretty even split there as well. 6 sectors in the red. The biggest laggards here are utilities and financials, each down about 0.5% to 0.6%. Staples also lower by 0.25%. And the outperformer of the day is consumer discretionary, really led by the auto-related stocks, up more than 1%. Materials and tech are also just finishing up in the green.
All right, guys, let's get to some of the individual gainers. I mentioned that semiconductors really outperforming as a whole and as a group today. What's interesting is there's a name we don't talk a lot about, ticker's ENTG, Integris. And we saw this one being the top gainer in the semiconductor index, $11.8 billion market cap. It's a semi-manufacturing company. And I was looking for some news like throughout the day and really didn't see anything specifically, although reader interest in social was unusually high, though the number of news stories about the company was no greater than average. So no notable news, but the stock was up about 4%. So I thought it was just kind of interesting to see that one being such an outperformer. Actually, it's up 7.6%, today. So quite an outperformer. Qualcomm, staying in the semi space, that one was up more than 4% in today's session. The chip maker reached an agreement to buy AlphaWave for about $2.4 billion. That was a cash deal. They are doing this to expand its technology for artificial intelligence. So again, an AI play. The deal will be subject to regulatory and shareholder approval. It is, though, is expected to close in the first quarter of 2026. AlphaWave's board unanimously recommending the cash offer, so they're already all in on this. And then Synchrony Financial, got to mention that one as well. Off its highs of the day, was up 4% at one point, but finishing with a 2.7% gain, so some outperformance there. This is as Walmart's credit cards will be issued by Synchrony Financial, with OnePay offering co-branded and private label cards in the U.S. later on this year. So
I thought they just
nice little tie up there.
They did. It was something about the way they do contracts, basically.
Oh, exciting.
Good talk.
Okay. All right, let's go to Apple. I've been watching shares of Apple all day as the company held its Worldwide Developers Conference in Cupertino. We spoke to Ed Ludlow there a little earlier. Shares were up as much as 1% earlier in the session, but ended up falling 1.2%. Perhaps investors learned more, or maybe they were left wanting more. The company is introducing liquid glass. This is a new Vision iOS-like design language across its different platforms. Not a surprise if you've been paying attention to what Mark Gurman has been writing for weeks at this point, and perhaps that's why it was kind of a sell the news event out of Cupertino. Also, the iPhone is getting a revamped phone and camera apps that focus on simplicity. Lots more news there. I encourage you to check out our live blog for more information about what was unveiled. Also, you know about merger Mondays or media Mondays. This is a media Monday, but it's more like a divorce when it comes to some traditional media. We're talking about Warner Brothers Discovery. Shares of Warner Brothers Discovery falling about 3% on the session today. This after the company said that it was separating into two different companies. It's the global networks business, so that'll include entertainment, sports, and dozens of cable TV brands such as CNN, TNT, and TBS. Then it will hold a 20% stake in the other company, that's the streaming and studios business. That'll be headed by David Zaslav, and it'll essentially it'll use proceeds from that entity as a way to cut debt, the company said in a statement earlier. Shares were up earlier in the session by as much as 13%, but ended up falling by about 3%. And finally, shares of Robinhood. Do you guys remember last week there was all this speculation about Robinhood being included in the S&P 500 as a result of the quarterly rebalancing? So you had companies like AppLovin as well surge. Robinhood surged last week 13%. And then look what happened Friday. The markets close, and then, S&P indices, or Dow Jones Industries rather, come out and say, no, we're not actually changing it up at all. S&P Dow Jones Industries said, we're leaving the S&P 500 the same. Robinhood fell by about 2% today as a result.
And Applied Digital down 6%. A lot of people thought they would make it in as well.
Yeah.
Ouch, ouch, all those rumors. All right, let's take a look at the bond market here, guys. So buying pretty much across the curve, that front end down by about 3 basis points. So today's not the big mover, but tomorrow you get the 3-year, then the 10-year Wednesday, and then you have 30-year on Thursday. All told, you're looking at $119 billion with the 30-year rate around an 18-year high, clearly off that level, but around that area. That's what many investors are going to be watching, guys.
All right, so let's get to something that's happening right now. For those who have recently graduated from college, it's not such a great job market, even if you've got good qualifications. And apparently a couple things are going on. In some cases, it's just companies like not looking to hire. And the other thing is AI is replacing some of the jobs that maybe normally went to college grads.
Yeah, Claire Ballantyne writing about this. So even a short period of unemployment can have long-term effects when it comes to a graduate's career. You could lose a potential of $22,000 over the next decade. So it's a really stressful time for those who are just starting their careers. There's a lot of disruption happening right now. It's kind of scary when you think about the job market that these new folks are entering. But I guess, I don't know. I mean, I guess the question is, oftentimes we do enter the job markets in periods of turmoil. I mean, I think a lot of folks remember entering the job market during the Great Recession.
But is this supposed to be worse?
There?
I mean, I saw some of the data that it's something like about 85% of basically the increase that we've seen on the unemployment rate. That's largely, Scarlett, because of new entrants.
Right, like college graduates, for instance. And of course, the class of 2025, when they were applying to college, the big thing was to be a computer engineering major. And those are the jobs, that's the major where they're having a really, really hard time finding jobs because entry-level jobs in that field just isn't opening up. And a lot of that is because of AI. And like Carol said, companies holding off until they get more clarity.
Now, if you do get a job and you're asked to go into the office, you actually may not have a desk.
What?
And that is the topic of our next discussion here. So you know how banks...
Nice segue.
Thank you. Bank executives are pushing for return to office work, right? But banks are now facing apparently a shortage of desks, particularly in London because of the real estate squeeze.
I love this story. And it's not just banks in London, it's banks here. We had the same issue with the federal government here in the United States when the Trump administration asked all these people to come back.
And there wasn't enough toilet paper.
Yeah, and there weren't enough desks. I mean, so it's like, come on, guys, infrastructure, get up.
Can you imagine having to hot desk all the time? You know, a lot of people have to bring everything with them, their laptop, their shoes, their books with them, whatever, if they need to consult any books because they're not digital. But like you're bringing a little rolly suitcase with you every time you go into the office.
You couldn't do that because if you've seen your desk, you and I could not do that because our desks are hot messes. Let's not talk about our desks. Yeah. But if you look at, say, Kayla, like our booker, like she's good to go. Like she can just go to different desks.
Who has the cleanest desk of
well, I know it's not us.
100% it's not me, Carol, or
That's
Scarlett.
the
three of us are out. I think it's just a Tim versus Romaine situation.
I think Tim probably has a beat, right?
I don't know.
Did you guys? I got some bad news a little earlier today. Carol and I are flying to San Diego tonight
That's bad
for a
news?
conference.
Okay.
The bad news is we're sitting next to each other.
Oh, wow.
And Carol has this policy. She does not sit next to me on an airplane. She refuses to do it.
Interesting.
Some reason.
Is it just him or is it like a co-anchor?
No,
it's actually everyone. Don't you need your space on the plane?
That makes
Ask
sense.
all of my colleagues. I'm just I love you, but when I'm on a plane.
Can I just say, a couple months ago, I ended up sitting next to Michael McKee, our Bloomberg International economics correspondent, and kudos to Mike. He did not say a word to me. I did not say a word to him. We said our hellos, and then we just ignored each other. And I really appreciate you for that, man. I love you.
Well, apparently it's a thing.
That's my version of it.
That's
all right.
hysterical.
All right, guys. That's a wrap. Our cross-platform coverage, coast-to-coast coverage.
That's why
in fact,
still out there. What
Going
is
to
this?
the zoo.
It's like our new West Coast down here.
I might change my flight. Let Carol go by herself. That's what we're going to do.
I might walk to San Diego. All right, guys. We will see you again on Wednesday.
Maybe.